In 2021, a family on the outskirts of Portland bought a smart home security system. Cameras in every room. A voice assistant connected to everything. All synced to an app on their phones. It was the last time any of them would feel safe in their own home. What I'm about to tell you is not a ghost story. There are no spirits, no curses. What happened in that house has a perfectly rational explanation. And that's exactly what makes it so terrifying. The family's name was Harmon. Brandon, 38. His wife, Clara, 35. And their daughter, Maya, 9 years old. The system they installed was called NestGuard Pro, one of those devices that learns your routines. It knows when you arrive home, when you sleep, when you turn on the television. Over time, it builds a complete behavioral profile of everyone in the house. Everything worked perfectly for 5 months. Then on March 12th, Brandon checked the app and noticed something strange. The system was logging motion in the hallway at 3:15 in the morning every single night for the past 3 weeks. But when he tried to pull up the video, the file didn't exist. Just a message. Recording unavailable, error 404. Brandon assumed it was a technical glitch. He called support. They told him to restart the system. He did. The error kept coming back. What Brandon didn't know, what nobody at the company told him, is that NestGuard Pro had a hidden feature called Shadow Mode. It was designed to let company technicians access the system remotely for maintenance purposes. The problem was that the feature never turned itself off. And if the firmware was outdated, the system would accept connections from any external IP address. Someone had been watching the Harmon family for weeks. Not just watching, listening. The hallway camera picked up audio in a 12-meter radius, including Maya's bedroom. Clara started noticing small things. That someone had moved the shoes in the closet. That the alarm clock was going off 10 minutes early. That the voice assistant occasionally whispered responses to questions no one had asked. One night, Maya called her parents into her room. She was crying. She said the man on the screen had talked to her. Brandon checked the camera in Maya's room. The angle had shifted. Someone had rotated it remotely, using the device's built-in motorized adjustment system, controlled through the app. That night, they called the police. And here's the part that never made it into the news. The detectives who examined the system found something disturbing in the server logs. The IP address that had been accessing the Harmon's NestGuard corresponded to a neighborhood 4 kilometers away. When they went to investigate, they found an empty house. No furniture, no rental records, just marks on the floor where someone had positioned a chair in front of multiple screens for a very long time. And on the wall, written in black marker, were lists, routines, schedules, the exact daily schedules of the Harmon family. They never found who was responsible. The case remains open. The Harmons moved out. They disconnected everything. None of them have installed a smart device since. What disturbed me most when I researched this case wasn't the act itself. It was the scale. Because when authorities notified NestGuard Pro of the vulnerability, the company took 11 months to release a patch. And during those 11 months, Shadow Mode was still active on more than 40,000 devices across the country. 40,000 homes. With cameras, with microphones, with motorized lenses that could be aimed remotely. Nobody knows how many families were watched without their knowledge. Nobody knows how many people right now have a video archive of their private lives saved on a stranger's hard drive. The next time you speak to your voice assistant, stop for a second. Are you certain it's the only one listening? There is something doctors have known for decades that is rarely mentioned outside of hospitals. Under certain conditions, during surgery under general anesthesia, patients wake up. Not completely, not visibly. Their muscles remain paralyzed by the muscle relaxants. They cannot move, they cannot scream, they cannot blink, but they are completely, fully conscious. They hear every word. They feel every cut. This has a name, intraoperative awareness, and it occurs in approximately 1 out of every 1,000 surgical procedures. What I'm about to tell you is the case of a woman named Donna from Ohio, who in 1998 was admitted for a routine gallbladder surgery, a 90-minute procedure. Simple, no complications expected. Donna spent those 90 minutes completely awake. She felt the first incision, not as a dull ache or a distant pressure. She felt everything with a clarity she described years later as the sharpest level of detail I have ever experienced. She heard the surgeons talking about the previous night's game. She heard the sound of her own organs being handled. At some point, she heard the anesthesiologist say, "Vitals are stable. She's deep." She was not deep. Donna tried everything. She tried to move a finger. Her muscles didn't respond. She tried to force a blink. Nothing. The body she had known her entire life had become a prison of flesh. What Donna experienced has documented psychological consequences. Post-traumatic stress disorder in patients who suffer intraoperative awareness is, according to studies published in the Journal of Anesthesiology, statistically more severe than in victims of serious car accidents. Because the trauma didn't happen by accident, it happened in the safest place in the world, in the hands of people trained to care for you, while they believed everything was fine. Now comes the part hospitals prefer not to publicize. For decades, patients who reported awareness were routinely dismissed or diagnosed with post-operative anxiety. Doctors had no way to verify their accounts. The patient would say, "I was awake," and the system would say, "Impossible." The monitors showed nothing. Why? Because a standard anesthesia monitor measures physical signs: blood pressure, heart rate, anesthetic gas concentration. It does not measure consciousness. It never did. Consciousness doesn't have a number on a screen. A device called the BIS monitor has existed since 2003. It measures brain activity to estimate sedation depth. Many hospitals have it. Many do not use it routinely because it adds cost to the procedure. Think about that. Right now, in hospitals across the developed world, the difference between waking up on the operating table or not is a question of budget. Donna was eventually diagnosed years later, when intraoperative awareness was formally recognized by the medical community. It took her 6 years to find someone who believed her. But the case that truly stopped me was a man in Denmark, documented in a 2019 report. He was brought in for emergency cardiac surgery. There was no time to properly calibrate the anesthetic protocol. He woke up 15 minutes into the procedure and, according to his subsequent testimony, remained conscious for 2 hours and 40 minutes. 2 hours and 40 minutes. He didn't cry, he didn't panic. He describes making a mental decision at some point. If I'm going to survive this, I cannot spend my energy on terror. So he started counting, memorizing voices, cataloging every sound in his mind so he could report it afterward. He survived. He described his surgery with stunning precision, details later confirmed by the surgical team. The doctors who treated him went silent when they read his report. There is one more thing I want you to consider. If awareness occurs in 1 out of every 1,000 procedures, and millions of surgeries are performed every year around the world, the numbers don't lie. Right now, as you listen to this, there are statistically people in operating rooms around the world who are awake, motionless, silent, waiting for it to be over. And no one around them knows. The question that won't let me sleep is not whether this can happen to someone. The question is, how many cases were never reported? How many people left the operating room, tried to tell someone what they had lived through and were dismissed? How many carried that silence inside them forever? The body can become a trap. And the most terrifying part is that the trap has a door. It just only opens from the outside. Some cities die in wars, others in earthquakes, others in floods. And then there are cities that simply sink. No drama, no explosion, just millimeters every year, as if the earth is patiently reclaiming what was always hers. This is not science fiction. It is happening right now in dozens of places around the world. And the most disturbing part is not the sinking itself. It's that people are still living there. Mexico City sinks at a rate of between 20 and 30 centimeters per year in some areas. Over the last century, parts of the city have dropped more than 9 meters. The weight of millions of people pressing down on what was once a lake bed is compressing the clay layers beneath the surface at a rate geologists describe as irreversible. 9 meters. Put that in perspective. A 3-story building is approximately 9 meters tall. The city is one full building, lower than it was 100 years ago. And yet, 23 million people live and work there every single day. But what brought me to investigate this topic wasn't Mexico. It was a smaller place, one you've probably never heard of, Centralia, Pennsylvania. In 1962, a fire started in an abandoned coal mine beneath the town. Nobody knows exactly how it began. There are theories, but no certainty. What is certain is that no one put it out in time. And the coal began to burn. The coal is still burning today, not on the surface, underneath, in the mineral veins that stretch for kilometers in every direction below the streets, the houses, the churches of the town. In the 1970s, residents began noticing that the ground was warm beneath their feet. That steam was rising from cracks in the earth, that their pets were behaving strangely and dying without apparent cause. In 1981, a 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski was walking through his grandmother's backyard when the ground opened beneath him. He fell into a sinkhole that formed in seconds. He only survived because his cousin managed to grab his arm. The hole was 4 meters deep. The temperature at the bottom was over 300 degrees Celsius. Carbon monoxide levels were lethal. It was the backyard of a house where a family lived and cooked and slept. The federal government ordered the evacuation of the town in 1984. Most people left, some refused. They were offered financial compensation. They accepted. They left. The houses were demolished, but a few stayed. In 2020, Centralia had 7 registered inhabitants. 7 people living above a fire that cannot be extinguished, in a city that no longer exists on any map, surrounded by demolished structures and roads that lead nowhere. Geologists estimate the underground fire could last another 250 years. Why do they stay? This is the part I find impossible to let go of. In interviews, the last residents of Centralia say the same thing. It's home. There is nowhere else that feels like this. They were born here. Their parents are buried in the local cemetery, which paradoxically, is one of the only structures the government chose not to demolish. So these people are literally living above a fire that could open beneath their feet at any moment because they cannot bring themselves to leave their dead. There is something in that which is too deeply human to easily understand. But let's go back to sinking, because Centralia is not the only story of a city the earth is reclaiming. Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia, is the fastest sinking city in the world. Some areas in the north of the city drop 30 centimeters every year. The Indonesian government has made a radical decision. It is relocating the capital, building an entirely new city from scratch on the island of Borneo, an entire capital abandoned because the ground can no longer hold it. Jakarta has 10 million inhabitants. Not all of them can leave. And while the government builds its new capital, the most vulnerable areas of the city continue to sink. The people who live there, the poorest, the ones with nowhere to go, keep building their homes higher, adding another floor, trying to stay above the water that rises as the ground descends. It's a race. A race, the earth always wins. What strikes me most about these cases is not the geological scale, it's the human scale. The sheer number of ordinary decisions, ordinary lives, playing out on top of a silent process that no one can stop. Right now, someone is sleeping in Jakarta. Someone is cooking dinner in Mexico City. Someone is walking through the backyard of their house in some corner of the world where the ground is not what it seems. And the earth keeps descending, millimeter by millimeter, without urgency. Because the earth is not in a hurry. It has waited millions of years. It can wait a little longer. In 1997, a man named Frederick Borden walked into a youth shelter in San Antonio, Texas. He was 23 years old. He had a French accent and a story that was entirely fabricated. He told them his name was Nicholas Barclay, that he was 16 years old, that he had been kidnapped 3 years earlier in Spain by a human trafficking network. They believed him. What happened next is one of the most disturbing identity fraud cases documented in the 20th century. Not because of blood, not because of violence, but because it exposes something far more unsettling. How little we truly know about the people we love, and how much the human brain is capable of ignoring when it doesn't want to see. Nicholas Barclay was an American teenager who had vanished in 1994 in San Antonio. Blonde, blue eyes, 3 years younger than Borden, and crucially, an American citizen. while Borden was a French national with dark brown eyes. The Barclay family flew to Spain to bring their son home. They recognized him. They took him home. Borden lived with them for nearly 4 months. There is something I need you to sit with for a moment. This man had an unmistakable European accent. He had eyes a different color from the missing boy. He was years older. And yet Nicholas's sister, Carrie, identified him as her brother. The mother embraced him. She prepared his bedroom. How is that possible? The psychologists who studied the case afterward introduced a concept I find one of the most disturbing in behavioral science: grief confirmation bias. When a family has lost someone and suddenly the possibility that they're alive appears, the brain literally suppresses warning signals. It doesn't ignore them consciously, it blocks them. As a protective mechanism that becomes a trap. The mother saw her son because she needed to see him. Borden, for his part, was an expert. He had been doing this for years across Europe. He had impersonated teenagers in France, Spain, Germany. He knew exactly how to move, when to cry, how to build a story with enough detail that no one would want to question it. It was a private investigator, not the police, who first began to suspect something was wrong. Charlie Parker had been searching for Nicholas Barclay independently for years. When he met Borden, something didn't fit. The gestures, the accent, the way his eyes moved when he described the kidnapping. Parker requested a DNA test. The result confirmed what should have been obvious from the start. Borden was not Nicholas Barclay. He had no biological connection to the family whatsoever. He was arrested, tried, sentenced to 6 years in prison. But here is the part that no one talks about enough. What actually happened to Nicholas Barclay? He was never found. His disappearance remains unsolved. There are theories. Some suggest he died under circumstances the family knew about and preferred to keep hidden. Some investigators have proposed that the speed with which they accepted Borden might be explained in part by the relief of closing a story that had become too painful to keep open. But that is speculation. What is not speculation is this: an adult man, a foreigner, with eyes the wrong color, lived for months in the bedroom of a missing child. He slept in his bed. He used his name. He received his family's love. And no one in that house made a single call to verify his identity until someone from the outside came looking. Borden was dubbed by the press the chameleon. When he was interviewed years later, he said something I have not been able to stop thinking about. He said he never understood why people were so surprised. That in his experience, people don't want to see the truth. They want to see what they need to see, and that he simply gave them that. The case of Frédéric Borden is not the story of a genius of deception. It is the story of what grief can do to human perception. And the question I keep coming back to, the one with no comfortable answer, Dirowitz, is this. If someone we loved disappeared and years later someone showed up claiming to be that person, would we be certain we would see the difference, or would we see what we need to see? On August 15th, 1977, a radio telescope in Ohio picked up something that shouldn't exist. A radio signal coming from deep space, with exactly the characteristics scientists had spent decades looking for as possible evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. It lasted 72 seconds. Then it disappeared. It has never been repeated, not once. In nearly 50 years of active searching, with the most sophisticated instruments humanity has ever built. That signal remains unique. It's called the wow signal. And depending on who you ask, it is either the most significant clue in the history of science or the most frustrating mystery we have ever encountered. The name comes from the annotation made by astronomer Jerry Amon when he reviewed the printed data the following day. He circled the numbers and wrote a single word in the margin: wow. Let me explain why that reaction made sense. Scientists searching for radio signals of extraterrestrial origin have very specific criteria for what to look for. Artificial transmissions, meaning those created by intelligence rather than natural phenomena, have distinct mathematical characteristics, precise frequencies, patterns. The wow signal met nearly every one of those criteria. It came from the right direction of the sky. It was on the right frequency. It had the right intensity. It was, in every measurable sense, exactly what an intelligent transmission from deep space would look like. And then it was gone. In the decades that followed, dozens of radio telescopes turned toward that region of the sky. The SETI project monitored it for years. In 1987 and 1989, there were massive, internationally coordinated observation campaigns. Nothing. In 2012, for the 35th anniversary of the detection, a group of scientists sent a response in that direction. A radio message composed of tweets from people around the world. It was a gesture more symbolic than scientific, but it reveals something about what that signal does to the human mind. It compels us to respond, to react, as if at some intuitive level, we feel that someone was there. There are alternative explanations, there always are. The most discussed in recent years was proposed in 2017 by astronomer Antonio Paris, who suggested the signal may have been produced by two comets passing through that region of the sky at the time. The hypothesis generated debate. Many researchers rejected it. They argued that comets don't produce signals with those characteristics at that specific frequency. The debate continues, and while it continues, the signal remains what it is: a 72-second event that happened exactly once, that met every criterion of what we were looking for and never came back. There is something philosophically disturbing about that. Not the possibility that it was extraterrestrial. That's the exciting part, the part that makes headlines. The disturbing part is the other possibility, that it was exactly what it seemed, and whoever sent it simply didn't try again. Why would someone transmit only once? There is a concept in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence called the Great Silence, or the Fermi Paradox. If the universe is billions of years old and contains billions of stars, the mathematical probability that another intelligent civilization existed is enormous. And yet we have received no clear signal, no verifiable contact, nothing. The wow signal makes that paradox harder to hold comfortably, because it implies a third possibility that scientists rarely articulate in public but that exists in private conversations. That someone tried to contact us once, received no response, because in 1977 we didn't have the technology to reply in real time, and simply moved on. That we passed the test without knowing it was a test, and we failed it. 72 seconds. That's all we had. I think about Jerry Amon reviewing that printed data the following morning, circling the numbers, writing that word in the margin. I think about what he must have felt when he realized what he was looking at. And then I think about what he must have felt weeks later, when attempt after attempt to recapture it failed. Finding something extraordinary and losing it before you can hold it. That somehow seems more terrifying to me than never having found it at all. Because it means that the universe at some point opened a door, and we didn't know we were supposed to walk through it.